A prophecy has been foretold. Today, the angel of death is upon us. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, you guys thought our genty goodness was over with the Gentmo guitar? No, I found the Angel of Death. This is what I understand as the last attempt by Gibson within the Henry J era to produce a 7-string, and these things were birthed in the year 2016. Produced in 2 variations, each of them limited to 300 in production each. Today, we're going to look at the coolest of the series, in my opinion, the Angel of Death. Death metal, that is. But today, let's take a look at the light version counterpart. The all-white, kind of like the Baritone SG, but not. This is the 7-string SG variation. So its official title is SG Light 7, but right under that on the official spec sheet, Gibson gave it the nickname the Angel of Death Metal, and that just kind of stuck. Unfortunately, the other one in the series was essentially this, but completely blacked out. It was called the SG Dark 7, so pretty much the exact same guitars, 300 of each made, they just had different colors going on here. But yeah, this is one of those weird, goofy 7-string guitars that has 4 on this side, 3 on that side, but man, what a cool name and some pretty darn cool specs going on with this thing. So, as one of Gibson's last attempts in the 7-string guitar market in this particular era, who knows, they might try to do it again in another 10 years when they get bored of producing traditional stuff, they decided to go a little bit more traditional with these 7-strings with passive pickups. So we actually have the Seymour Duncan JB and 59 set in here, just in their 7-string variations, so that is going to be very good. I mean, Gibson's not really known for doing 7 strings, there were very few of them. If you need to learn more, you can check out the Gentmo video. But what makes this SG special, besides the white finish and the 7 strings, comes down to the fact that it's also a 24 fret SG. So we were talking last time that people would complain about 7-string Gibsons being expensive, not being extended scale lengths, not being a full 2 octaves and stuff. This one at least got the full 2 octave thing, right? It's still not an extended scale. You have to go for the baritone version of this guitar if you want that. So it was kind of a step in the right direction in that attribute. But everything else cool about this one actually comes down to our fretboard. So they used real mother-of-pearl inlays on here, and they decided not to oversize them like sometimes people will do on 7-string guitars. So it kind of looks a little bit more traditional with that. And look at the 7th fret inlay. I've always loved that about these. It's Roman numeral 7, so VII, in the exact same shape as one of these trapezoids. That's always been cool, but it's bugged me that it's not at the 12th fret for like perfect symmetry. But at the same time, I'm sure people will be like, why did Gibson put 7 on the 12th fret? So I get why they put it there, right? But the reason why I think the Angel of Death is the better option of the two is the fact that I got a special case. You have this white Gibson USA exterior here. Now, the bad thing about white cases is the fact that, you know, they get pretty dirty easily. I mean, you can see some marks on this one, and the white to the handles kind of started to change colors here. But then the interior is also white, whereas the SG Dark just got the same black one, so it wasn't necessarily too special in that aspect. But as far as case candy here, let's check out what these things originally came with. So here we can see a baby photo of it being perfectly white. Now, unfortunately, white Gibsons have a tendency to yellow. Not just because this happened to have been owned by a smoker, but because if you leave them in the case, apparently it's something in the off-gassing of the glue. Sometimes that happens. That's very common on white Gibsons. So the body on this one's pretty good, but the yellow on the headstock is a little bit extreme. Looks like we got a pre-pack checklist like most of these did, and our owner's manual warranty pamphlet. Do not use these black polishing cloths. They will discolor your guitar. If you want proof, if you leave them in the baggie, you can see it starts changing colors just by itself. And we got our truss fraud tool in there. All right, let's go ahead and throw this 7-string Angel of Death onto the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs to see what makes this one tick. Now that we've got the Angel all cleaned up, let's go ahead and check this thing out. So electronics-wise, even though we're not big 7-string guys here on the Trogly's Guitar Show, hey, we have familiar pickups here. They're actually the JB Seymour Duncan and the 59 in the neck. They're just the 7-string versions. So right here you can see the SH1N, which is code name for the 59, and then over here the SH4 code for the JB.
But as far as our cavities go, we actually have a long neck tenon in here. You can see the AW writing right there, standing for Alpine White. Then the bridge position, if you look really closely, you can see something right here. It looks like SGL S7, SG light something 7 string. Be my guess. But just as a fun fact, you might think, hey, that pickup looks awfully familiar. We had just reviewed Gemmo over here, and I'm betting that's where that pickup came from, because the demo shop has been selling a couple of these 7-string SGs. This is not one of those. I bought this used from someone, and I think I remember seeing one that was modified, so they at least had one extra pickup hanging around for that guy over there. But just like Gemmo, we have a 7-string bridge, has the same branding, Buckethead 99 7-string. What it actually stands for, I don't know. But this time we actually have a 7-string stop bar tailpiece on here. Looks just like the basic stuff, just a little bit bigger. So unlike the Baritone SG, that looks suspiciously similar to this guitar, this does not have any coil splitting functions, unfortunately. So that's something that the Baritone one has over this. However, if it's anything like the Gemmo guitar, it could have been wired like that. We'll have to see when we get into the back. But we have a 3-way toggle switch, also with a white tip, and all whited out knobs with our output jack on the front here. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and grab our readings. It looks like last time I was right. That is 19k ohms in the circuit for our bridge. Then our neck 59 here, way less, 8.45. So that is just extra hot, but I guess as a JB it should be. And our middle position, just for fun, 5.84k ohms. So this bad gal was sold to me as excellent condition. It is very well taken care of, but unfortunately it is common on this model to get finish checking. And we're not just talking like your basic light finish checking. We're talking where there's areas of high stress. It's pretty common for these to have very long finish checks. I'll adjust my lighting here so you guys can see it a little bit easier. So the first one is right here. I initially thought, okay, is that a seam line of the body showing? But no, it's actually stemming right here from the pot shaft, because it stops here. So it just went from there all the way up there. We've got another one that kind of stemmed from this pressure point that just went all down into there. And then you've got a whole bunch around right here, because there's a lot of pressure on that with 7 strings. It kind of cracked up in there. And this is all just in the finish. It's nothing to worry about, but it is pretty common on these. My favorite one to follow was right here, because it starts from this screw, goes up the side of the neck, takes a little whoopity-woo detour down here, and then continues up the side, and then there's another small one over here. Now that doesn't mean every single one of these will have that, but it's very similar to how we get a yellowed over headstock. It just happens on these. You kind of have to live with it. This has a mahogany body to it. It's nice and sculpted. We might as well grab some measurements, because an SG is another one of those ones where it doesn't necessarily look too crazy if you widen it out a bit. That one is about 11 inches at the shoulder, and I would say about 13 1/4 at the lower bout. And I'd say about 15 1/2 from where it would meet at the heel. But now we move on to our mahogany neck. We have a Richlite fretboard. This is another one of those Richlite boards that looks so good I could be convinced that it's ebony. But since this was birthed in 2016, there was no ebony used on Gibson production level guitars. From late 2011 until like early 2019, when the new Gibson management came back in, they started to use it on more models. I think Richlite gets a bad rep because it looks like trash from the Gibson factory. They're always dried out, kind of disgusting looking, but then once you play them for a couple of years, they start to look like this. So I'll be interested to see what happens to Richlite in the future now that it's not being as widespread used. In 20-30 years, is there going to be a famous guy using a Richlite fretboard guitar and only swear by them? Kind of like how Silverburst wasn't a super fancy color that people loved back in the day until some famous people started to use them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Richlite in the future. But it is super stable. But here you can see your real mother-of-pearl inlays. Typically, SGs do not have real mother-of-pearl, so that makes it special, and the 7 right here, which is just great. Love it. But something else you might not have known about this one is, hey, look, we do not have fret nibs on this model. Fake! Fake! It's a fake Gibson! No, it's not fake. So 2014, 2015, and I believe it's like early 2016, some models will not have fret nibs. Gibson USA decided to just do away with them for some reason. And I could see that becoming useful on a 7-string model, because then you don't have to worry about any fret nib catching like sometimes will happen. But you will notice we have 24 medium jumbo frets. Why they don't give us another side marker inlay, I'm not sure. 24 and 3/4 inch scale length still holds true, with a typical 12-inch radius. We have 1.94 inches at the nut width, which increases to 2.39 by the 12th. Kind of like that 7-string Flying V, we got 0.85 at the first fret neck depth, and 0.91 by the 12th. It's just a really wide feeling flat neck. Here you can see the neck profile. First fret, 12th fret. Moves into more of like a D shape by the 12th, and it's a little bit more rounded at the first fret. And now the face of the headstock. This is where they kind of let me down on this model. They should have had black mother of pearl instead of just black silk screen and the crown being printed on. They went full out here. Why can't they do it on the headstock? That would have made this guitar even cooler. But here's a good look at just how yellowed over this headstock is. That's what the finish started life as, pure white. And now it's all yellowed over. It just happens to a lot of white Gibsons like that, especially in this time frame. It's always just the headstocks. I don't understand. But our truss rod looks good there, and we have a pure white truss rod cover. Definitely sticks out a little bit more now than it did new. But the difference in feel between this guitar and Gemmo over here is very extreme. I think it's because the person who owned this before me put really heavy gauge strings on here. It's either that or regular tuners feel this much different. I'm actually kind of surprised that this model did not come with locking tuners. That's kind of a shame for such a big heavy metal beast right here. So far I would really suggest putting heavy gauge strings on your 7-string Gibsons. It really just ate up all the flub. Like the Gemmo just has a completely different feel because of that. It almost feels like there's no tension on the neck at all, but this one's pretty darn cool. But let's go ahead and flip on over to our backside here. So it's got the Tony Iommi kind of vibes going on here. Not exactly at the top of the horn, but in the secondary location, whereas normally it would be right here. And that's because these actually have a sculpted heel joint. Well, they say it does. In reality, they did almost next to nothing. They just kind of softened this area up. There's not too much they can really do with an SG without compromising the neck joint. Or at least not that Gibson's comfortable doing anyways. But your other strap button's down here, and it's the large style one. So it's a regular strap button, but being larger, it's supposed to act kind of like a strap lock. And then I was kind of surprised to see under here. I forgot Gibson still did PCB technology. But that's what we have in here, which is really strange to see. They would have had to have custom ordered 600 sets of these humbuckers in a quick connect setup from Seymour Duncan, because I'm pretty sure that's their own patent right there. So they had to let them use that to create those. I mean, making 600 sets of pickups, it seems to make good business sense to do that. But I was definitely surprised to see PCB in here. With our backplate back on, it's pure white. You can see how there's a slight difference in color here. However, this actually still has the plastic on the back of it, so that's kind of cool. The back actually looks free of finish checking from what I can see right now, but sometimes that stuff plays peekaboo. And the neck just has a little bit running right there in those two areas that I was showing you earlier. But otherwise, the back of this neck is very nice and interesting. I think there might be a hidden spec to these, because you see that line, and then there's another line right there. This might actually be a multi-piece mahogany neck, because those are definitely seam lines. They're underneath the finish. Those aren't finish checking. And it's not just the wings, or is it? Do they have extra big wings on these? I don't think so, because that would still be on the neck. So here's my best thought, is they probably have this neck as 3 pieces, and instead of doing traditional wings, since this needs to be a bit wider, they just took those boards, made them extra wide, and then just carved it out. Nope, scratch that. I can actually see a wing line right here. I don't know if it'll show up on camera or not. So it just might be a 3-piece mahogany neck with the wings on top of that. But here we can see our serial number. This is part of the year production number years. So it's a 2016 model since it has the leading 16, and it tells you that right here. But once again, these are just regular Grover tuners, not the locking variety. Just like the Gemmo 7-string Flying V, definitely the same pickups. They just fluoresce like crazy under black light, but this one has 2 of them. And then take a look at our truss rod cover. It also does the same thing. Even the nut has that same phenomenon. That's cool. As far as the finish, everything is looking even here. So in case you're not familiar, that means there's been no touch-ups, breaks, cracks, or repairs. And that's a really good sign that we don't see any finish breaking in those finish check areas, because then you would know it's a little bit more than just a check. All said and done, this one weighs about 7 pounds, 5.5 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds.
All right, if you guys thought normal SGs were bad, oh my goodness. There's no way you could balance this thing. It's probably best to sit down with the Angel of Death. Now that we know all about the Gibson SG7 Lite, what are my final thoughts on this one?
so neck heavy. It wasn't necessarily the best in that aspect. However, I bet if you knew actually how to play a 7-string, unlike me, you might enjoy it a little bit more. The neck is just so wide feeling. Even though this is the second 7-string that I've played recently, I can't get accustomed to that super wide neck. Like, it's fun to play around with like the Genty stuff and only focus on these 2 strings, but once you try doing your other stuff, it really forces you to kind of play more traditionally, like with the flat thumb on the back, because that's really the only way to get to this. So how Stevie T, Jared Dines, and whatnot play like 20-string guitars, I don't know. I just have fun documenting these things. As far as the tones, the neck pickup really stole the show. That sounded great with some clean tones. Obviously, the JB and the bridge, I mean, it's very overpowering. It would also help if I had a proper amp for something like this. I mean, deluxe reverb, not necessarily the best for something like this, but I hope you guys enjoyed checking this out anyways. Alright, Troglodytes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.